Conservative. Constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
Today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, Beshear says he's only being looked at for president because of how successful he's been in Kentucky. Well, what's he actually been particularly good at? Well, it's not exactly his governance as much as it is what one political reporter has called wholesome maxing, but I'll just call it what it is, ultimate gaslighting. Though this does lead to a question about how the Republicans in the legislature and in Kentucky in general, the Republican Party has done such a horrible job with messaging and politics and honestly general policy that they promulgated, that a Democrat governor can be considered a great success on a national stage to other Democrats when Republicans really is who controls the state. We'll take a look at exactly what is the economic policy the Republicans have been allowing Beshear to be the front man for them on, and that policy makes no sense. Then finally, the Louisville Metro Police Department police chief has issued her resignation letter. She goes out the door, Chief Jacqueline, and it sounds just like a breakup letter from a scorned lover. We'll be digging into that today. We'll have so much more. So please make sure if you're listening to this and you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure you subscribe to the show. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button wherever you're listening at if you can do that. Leave a review on the podcast, please. Leaving reviews and especially comment reviews can cause things to kind of trend, and it causes higher show-ups in the search bar. So if you want to make sure that you're helping spread the show as much as possible, please make sure you leave a review on the podcast and tell others to tune in as well. You can tell them just head on over to theandrewshow.com. They can hit the Listen Now tab and see all the different places where they can tune into the show. But without further ado, let's get into it. So I want to start off with this video. Now, I think you've probably seen bits and pieces and parts of it, but I don't think you've seen the full 2 minutes and 30 seconds of it. And it's Beshear being asked about running for president, about his considerations, why he thinks he's being considered. Let's take a listen to it, because I think there's something he says in here that we need to really break down. Let's take a listen.
But he is still the candidate. Only he can make decisions about his future candidacy. And so as long as he continues to be in the race, I support him. Only the president can determine his future as a candidate. He is the candidate, and as long as he is, I'm supporting him. Listen, it's flattering when people mention your name and something like that, but I think it's a reflection of all the good things going on in Kentucky. That as compared to the rest of the country, the temperature's been turned down here. Democrats and Republicans all excited about the jobs we're creating, the investment that we're seeing, record low unemployment, the record low recidivism, decreases in our overdose deaths. Those are all really good things. So I think the rest of the country turns to us and says, how can a Democratic governor, a Republican General Assembly create really good results? And I think the answer to that is everything is not partisan. And people are tired of the clashes day in and day out. So when they look at what we have done in Kentucky, they see a better future that's beyond some of the back and forth that we see on the federal level.
Governor, can you give us a little color for what the room was like when you were watching the debate? I know we got a statement from Governor Prez out of Illinois, and I think you were probably with him on that night.
I was with him and Governor Whitmer, but I left right before the debate. I do hear that it was tense afterwards. Those are a lot of people that very strongly believe in their candidate, and it was a rough night. And the president's admitted that it was a rough night. My hope is that there's more information forthcoming, that he'll speak to the American people and to leaders around the country. As long as President Biden is our candidate, he has won the primary here and others, I'm positive that our delegates will support him.
Are you a super delegate for the convention?
I know I am a delegate. I'm not sure how super I am, but I am a voting delegate at the convention and probably fall within that, but not necessarily in the ones that were changed as they have been, but not entirely familiar with those rules as they've changed.
You said you would support him as long as he's the candidate. If something were to happen between now and the convention and he was no longer the nominee, would you jump in?
I'm going to answer that question the same way when I was asked about Senator McConnell, is that the president says he's staying in, and I believe him.
So, real quick, before they asked him a few things. He said a few different things, and I want to talk about those. And this actually wasn't even in my notes to mention. I just kind of caught it as I was listening with you all. One, he was referencing, of course, a event he went to on debate night where Governor Whitmer and Gavin Newsom and some others and Kamala Harris, his husband, were all at this event to watch the presidential debate. So that's what he was referencing as far as that event he went to, full of people, tense. But, he mentioned something where he was unsure of what the rules are for the Democrat Party's process to elect the president. And either he's lying to make it seem like he's really not considering running for president right now, it's not on his radar, or he is just an idiot. I'll let you pick which one, because he's both a liar and an idiot. So you can pick which one, but imagine you're somebody. Anybody who's been around me for the last several years, and if you've listened to the show for years, you heard me saying Beshear will be a VP candidate on a ticket. I guarantee it. He will try to run for president in 2028. He won't do quite well enough in order to actually win the presidency. I think, just my opinion, I don't think he has the same national ties as some of the other candidates do to bring in the money and network that way. But maybe he does, but I don't think so, potentially. But I think, especially too, because he's a straight white guy, you see, and that really doesn't work for the base. I think if the base doesn't get a minority woman in there, like pronto for president, the next person up, I think they might have like a literal like rebellion, maybe armed, maybe not armed against the DNC. So I think it's going to have to be a minority woman. We all know how, those types of checkmarking boxes matter to the Democrat base. But I think Beshear will be the vice president candidate on that ticket in 4 years. And I've been calling that for a while. I was calling that during his governor reelection. I said, really, this is about if he can win here, he'll go on to be on that VP ticket. And I've mentioned it a few different times to people around me and obviously on the show over the last several years. And so, anyways, this has obviously then been something he's been eyeing up for a while. I mean, he put together that PAC, right? You guys understand what I'm saying. But he doesn't know how the president actually gets picked for the Democrat ballot. He doesn't actually know like the rules about how you become the presidential nominee for the Democrat Party. Doesn't that like worry anybody that like he's an idiot? I mean, think about what he just copped to, right? He just admitted that one of the biggest things that the party does, select the candidate for the presidential election, he doesn't know the rules of. That's insane to me. That's crazy that he would one, admit that, and then two, like I said, he's got to be faking that, right? Like, there's one thing, he's horrible at policy, he's horrible at a lot of things, we'll talk about that, but there's one thing, like, you gotta know, and that's how to politic, what the rules are of your party, surely. Unless he's just been grifting off his dad's coattails so much that, well, that's why he's been governor. But if that's the case, well, he's not actually going to do well on the national stage because he doesn't have his dad's name to carry him through. Also, another thing here, Beshear's going to need to improve upon his on-camera-ness. And I've talked about this once before. I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm not the most attractive guy out there. I'm not trying to say it that way. I'm just saying this from just a sheer noticing side of things. Beshear constantly looks bad on camera. He looks pasty. He looks sweaty. He looks disheveled. It's constant. It's consistent. And that needs, if he's going to try to run for president, that needs to be fixed. But, he's not like a Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom, I'll say that. He's fantastic on camera. Knows how to present himself well on camera. But even during the debates and things like that, during the governor's elections, you can see him on camera, and it's just, he does not present well. Doesn't present well. And that's something that, Beshear's going to have to answer. Why is he better than Gavin Newsom? Why is he? Because Gavin Newsom's also a straight white guy, but he's from a liberal state that has, and when he talks about successes, has actually done liberal things, while Beshear has blustered a lot, but not actually gotten to do. So, on to his claim then that people are only looking at him because of success in Kentucky that he's having. I mean, come on. Do people really think anyone in politics actually cares about how successful a candidate is at implementing whatever policies or getting XYZ done? No, what they care about, and the only thing they care about, is winning elections. That's all they care about. It's not about accomplishments. If it was about accomplishments, Kamala Harris wouldn't be the VP, right? And Pete Buttigieg wouldn't be the transportation secretary. Gavin Newsom wouldn't even be given a second look. His state's failing. People are leaving it. Population's going. Deficits are increasing. He wouldn't even be given a second look. He's not successful there. No, the reason why they're looking at Beshear is because they think maybe he can offer them a chance at picking up some more rural people in red states. Because they look at him and how he won in Kentucky, and they say, well, if he can apply that nationwide, then that'll work. And I said it earlier in the show, I'll bear saying again, that Beshear's success in Kentucky is not transferable to the national stage. The Beshear name means nothing on the national stage. Sure, his wife's a little bit connected. His wife's mother was vice president of Disney, vice president of eBay, and his wife's father is a marketing executive out in California. His wife's from California. And so, sure, they're connected a little bit, but he really doesn't have quite that national stage attention that some of these other people do. And he doesn't have that transferable name to other areas. It's not like, see, here's the thing, okay? Look at how Beshear won the first time, right? He won against Bevin, who was uniquely unpopular with the teachers and some of the other people. That sparked some issues, right? When people really didn't understand it, the media was able to demagogue. Keep in mind, this was at the same time that Kentucky's going through a shift from blue to red, so still a chance to win for Democrats to be able to win such an office, right? I mean, he was coming off of being the attorney general, so he had just won those elections. And those elections in general were close in those years. Take 2019, the Secretary of State's election. Michael Adams wins against Heather French Henry 52% to 47%. Not exactly a blowout election. So Secretary of State far closer than it was this year because it was still that transitional time. Democrats could still win, and that was a open seat. Open opportunity. Now, obviously, the rest of the Republicans won by generally pretty good margins, but a lot of those Republicans were currently in office. What that shows, though, is that when it comes to these elections, when it comes to Kentuckians voting, is that the incumbency matters in those positions a lot because the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And I said this all during the campaign, that Beshear, generally speaking, his more liberal tendencies that would bleed over and create kind of a reason not to vote for him for the general populace was largely kept in check by our legislature, not allowing him to do things. You can only be so far left on certain things if the legislature doesn't let you be, right? I mean, on the LGBTQ stuff, all the gender theory stuff, all those things that would really turn off the rural voter that would otherwise vote Republican, he didn't do. And the other factor in a Democrat winning in this state, and I cannot say this enough, is that his dad was the governor. That the majority of people voting in that election, voted for Beshear before. And so it becomes, you've got an incumbent Democrat who most people have voted for Beshear before, a Beshear of some sort, whether it's him or his dad. Of course, that's going to carry things, but that same, combination of factors isn't going to carry over into a national level. And he claims these successes in the state, but Beshear really hasn't had very many successes, certainly not on his own. I mean, look, any policy he's gotten to really control that he hasn't been tamped down on, things like, for an example, his juvenile Department of Justice in general, County for Health and Family Services, unemployment. I mean, he's been abysmal on juvenile Department of Juvenile Justice. I mean, they're under investigations. They've got use of force claims. They've got riots and rapes and misconduct by guards, and the list goes on and on and on. Candidate for Health and Family Services has issues with kids sleeping on office floors, kids not showering for days, sleeping on cots in there. Unemployment office. I mean, the legislature appropriated money for Beshear to fix the unemployment system and computer system years ago, and it still hasn't been completed. But the one thing that he can claim success on, that you hear him talk about all the time, is these record investments in jobs. When rubber meets roads, Beshear's actual policy is what we'd expect for a liberal, is what we expect from a liberal Republican. I mean, sure, he talks a big game on all the far left social things, but he can't do anything about it to a degree, or if he does do things about it, the legislature at least pretends to try to stop him, and the media runs cover for it. And then because we're dominated by this McConnellite system of thought amongst our legislature, where they really just care about things like economic development, not about any of the actual base social issues. They care about things like lining the pockets of the corporations, because it's a cycle that this is what McConnell realized, okay? If he does what the corporations want him to do, they'll give him the money, then he can use the money to control other politicians in politics and to win elections. And then that in turn gives him more power to do more for the corporation, so they give him more money, so he has more power, and it's an endless cycle, and it's the way to grab power. That's what the McConnellite thought process is. And that's what dominates our legislature. They don't care about anything that doesn't lead to more money in the coffers for them to be able to wield, to control everybody else around them and try to gain power themselves. Do the will of the corporations, maybe you'll work your way up the food chain. That's the way the thought process works. And so on those policies, Beshear and them largely align because they recognize the same thing. I mean, they're just as corrupt. They're just as used to that backhandedness. I mean, the corruption in Kentucky politics never really left. Kentucky was ranked and has been ranked regularly as one of the most corrupt states in the country. Because of these types of things that happen. So he can't do things on LGBTQ stuff, or if he does do things on it, the legislature ain't going to call him out on it because they really don't care, and the media is certainly not going to call him out on it. And so that's been largely hidden from, kept in check. The more liberal, when I was interviewed about this around the governor's campaign, the media came to me on a few things, and I talked about that. He is able to benefit from Republican moderism because that is more what he's like. That's more what he's like. But when it comes to economic development, well, he's right in line with the Republicans, and those are the things he keeps mentioning, which is why the fact Beshear is even being talked about on the national stage deals with a failure on the part of the Republican legislature. It's a testament to not just their incompetence, but their commitment to values that are completely not conservative. I mean, think about it this way, right? If Republicans didn't give Beshear hundreds of millions a year to hand out to private companies that he picks out, and then he gets to claim success on the investments on Beshear's part, well, that wouldn't happen if the legislature wasn't giving him hundreds of millions to spend however they want to. But they no strings attached either. They really don't care what he spends the money on. That means they agree with spending the money. And they agree with it because the corporations are coming in, they're doling out money to Beshear, doling out money to the Republican caucus, doling out money to the Republican leadership. I mean, just look, they weren't even challenged this year. People like Osborne, Stivers, not even challenged, but they were some of the biggest fundraisers into their campaign accounts this year. I'll dig into that probably on Friday. And what they do with that money, they used it to buy allegiance out of people. But there's a lot to disagree with on how Beshear's administration is spending this economic development money. I mean, we're told time and time again that this is big, important things. These are great spending policies by Beshear. And the Republicans just say, no, it's our spending policies. Which, I mean, I was always told the biggest difference between a Republican and Democrat is their economic strategies, their monetary difference. I've always been told that. The real difference here is just about how they spend money, right? When you talk to the liberal Republicans, they'll tell you that, all they'll talk about is economic development and how Republicans handle money better. But yet they're letting Beshear run with it willy-nilly. That means that it's not that Beshear's spending like a Republican, it's that Republicans and Democrats that are just trying to climb the political ladder agree. I mean, and they have no plan. Let's look at some of the biggest handouts this last year. Okay, this is from a website called Good Jobs First. If you ever get bored and feel like looking up subsidies by state and everything else, head on over to Good Jobs First and look at their subsidy tracker. Okay, so in 2023, when we look at any economic handouts above $1 million, what do we see from the state? We see Toyota Motor Manufacturing, $240 million. UPS, $36 million. Blue Oval SK, $10 million. Continental Mixers, 8.5. Novelis, 8.5. Mayfield Consumer Products, 6.5. Consumer Cellular, 5.5. Brown-Forman Distillery, 5. Rivian, 4.1. Denso Air Systems, $4 million. Champagne International, $4 million. Shelltech, 3.75. Confluent Health, 3.5. Neogen, $3 million. Luminia, Sustainable Materials, $3 million. Independent Staff Company, $3 million. Infact North America, $3 million. Microvast Advanced Membrane, $3 million. 29th Street Property Management, $2.5 million. Green River Distilling Company, $2.5 million. Diego American Supply, $2.5 million. Numac USA, $2.5 million. Precision of Iowa, $2.1 million. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And really, there's no rhyme or reason much to this. It's not like we're focusing in on one specific industry, saying, let's really focus on that industry. We're all over the place. We have things from distilling, electric vehicles, shipping with UPS, consumer products, cell phone companies, membranes, air systems, sustainable metals, property management companies, property development companies. They're bringing in things like, grocery stores. I mean, Kentucky Fresh Harvest, right? Tartar Gate Company, that's a company that builds gates. They got $1.5 million. Distribution. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. It's not like we're zeroing in on a specific industry. So you must be thinking, well, maybe there's like some formula that they're following. So maybe they don't zoom in on an industry, but anybody willing to bring jobs, they'll go ahead and bring in. And so they must have some way of kind of valuing this, right? Well, you'd be wrong. Let's look at Toyota. So Toyota's subsidy, $240 million. According to subsidy tracker here on Good Jobs First, it will take 5.3 years worth of payroll. Okay, so because they always talk about jobs. They're like, look at all the good jobs we're building. So if we take the average amount that they're being paid hourly, assume 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, it would take 5.3 years before the subsidy that was given to Toyota of $240 million matches the amount they would have paid out in jobs. 5.3 years. It's a pretty long time. But then you look at UPS's handout, where they were given $36 million, and according to Good Subsidy Track or Good Jobs First, the amount of time, the amount of payroll that it takes for them to get to that $36 million tax credit rebate that they were offered here is only a quarter of a year. That's a quarters of a year worth of payroll these jobs are bringing on. Blue Oval SK got $10 million for a training reimbursement, so that's just cash money. So there's no jobs there specifically. I mean, we can probably just add that into the $410 million they were given. Continental Mixers, when you look at how much they were given compared to what their salaries, payouts will be, it's just over a year. Novelis Aluminum Rolling, which let's say you're like, oh, Andrew, that falls in line with Continental Mixers, Blue Oval, Toyota. That's all kind of motor manufacturing. That falls in line. So they are going after some sort of industry. Well, remember, though, when we were sold things like Blue Oval, and we're sold on why it's worth giving Toyota a $240 million tax subsidy 5.3 years worth of their payroll. Why it's worth that? It's because, well, you're not thinking about all the auxiliary companies they bring in. Toyota just being there, even if we just give Toyota all the money they pay in taxes back and just give them all they have, well, we'll make tons off all these auxiliary companies. But even when it comes to the auxiliary companies like Novelis Aluminum Rolling, well, we give them handouts too. We give them a handout equal to Continental Mixers. We're supposed to not give them anything. Remember? They're supposed to just be gravy train that comes out to the other money we handed out. You know, they're giving $3 million to the membrane company. If we just go lower here, and you think, well, those are just the top ones, go to lower one. Go to Micro Vast Advanced Membrane Incorporated. We're giving them a $3 million tax credit and rebate, okay? They're delivering $24 million a year in payroll. So Toyota 5.3, UPS a quarter, Blue Oval, Continental Mixers over a year, Novelis Aluminum over a year, but the membrane company, nah. We'll give them, just a lot less than a year, than even a quarter of a year. I mean, there's no plan here. There's no rhyme or reason. There is no formula. And we heard it earlier, if you're listening to the show on Monday, where I talked about where the Contract Review Committee, they asked the Economic Development Cabinet, what is our ROI on some of these handouts? They don't know. They don't track it. They don't care. There's no plan. And that's what Beshear's claiming as success. And that's why he's saying he's qualified to be president and why people are looking at him, because him and the Republicans have no plan. All they do is hand out hundreds of millions of our tax dollars every year to these corporations with no accounting for how does this actually help the taxpayer. Probably because the voters don't demand it. Also probably because, well, if they track it, they might find out that they're spending money where they shouldn't be, and that might damage their ability to continue to just dole this money out to help the re-election campaigns. Moving now, Chief Jacqueline Gwynn Villaroli has officially resigned. She issued a resignation letter. This story is actually sent to me by a listener. If you'd like to reach out to the show, got story ideas, things you want to draw my attention to, feel free to email me, info@theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's info@theandrewshow.com. I want to thank Miss Webb for sending this over. Thank you. Let's take a listen now to the letter. Let's take a read here. Dear Mayor Greenberg, pursuant to your request for my resignation, it's with a heavy heart and considerable amount of duress that I herein tenure my resignation from the post of Chief of Police of the Louisville Metro Police Department. So pause there. So we already know something that wasn't disclosed before, that Mayor Greenberg did in fact ask for her to quit. She's not quitting on her own. He did ask for her to quit. And she should have been fired from the beginning. I'm sure she got suspended at first, and then the other lawsuits coming in from sexual harassment claims just kind of piled on, and he was like, never mind. We got the Scotty Scheffler thing. We got all this. We got the body camera issues. Let's just cut it. We continue now in the letter. I came here during challenging times for the agency and for the citizens, wherein a wall of divisiveness between the men and women of LMPD, wall of divisiveness. Well, now they just sexually harass each other. Apparently the wall came down. They just sexually harass each other like it's a fraternity and sorority dance. But anyways, the citizens, the media, and the mayoral administration existed. The divisiveness and subsequent toxicity were pervasive within LMPD and illuminated a conflict between those who sought diligently to uphold the proper ideals of the most noble of professions and those who were indebted to traditions, legacies, and operational standards contrary to the professional tenets of public service, fairness, impartiality, and ethics. So she mentions here that there's basically this kind of clash between the way things have been done and the way things need to be done. And that things like accountability, fairness, impartiality, ethics was incredibly important. What's odd for that claim, though, she's obviously portraying that she's on the side of ethics and fairness, impartiality. But the problem here is that how is it ethical that when a woman tells you, hey, before you promote that guy, I've been like sexually assaulted by him, you go ahead and just promote him anyways? That's not ethical. How's it ethical for you to not turn on your body camera? How's it ethical to promote the guy that's in charge of internal investigations when you get a claim like, hey, he's sexually harassing me, and not pause for like a second? That was the real issue here. It wasn't that there was a sexual harassment claim. It's that the sexual harassment claim was made, and then she just said, she didn't say, okay, we need to look into that before we promote him. She said, well, we'll just go ahead anyways. We'll just go ahead. Anyways, we continue here. From day one, my mission was to challenge the status quo perceptions and assuage this conflict by engaging with the troops and the community in a manner in which the environment where trust and legitimacy would be fostered and flourished, thereby improving the culture by which the department operates. The greatest challenge I encountered at the end was an invasive presence of professional and ethical apathy that was counterproductive to the morale of the brave, enthusiastic, motivated professionals who share the same passion and vision for a new, greater LMPD and drive to be true agents of public service. I could not be prouder of the working professionals of the LMPD. The department's long-standing cultural deficiencies permeated the agency, per my observations, in a vertical and linear orientation, emanating from certain members of leadership and filtering down the rank-and-file positions, thus creating an apathetic professional malice. It has been noted in the media that I've been often too hard on my commanders. I acknowledge that the perception is indeed an actuality. Due to the need to alter these cultural deficiencies, where accountability, cooperation, integrity, and professionalism were subsequent priorities to principles of cronyism, cliques, indiscretion, bullying, and backbiting could be mitigated. Well, let's pause here too, okay? She's claiming that, there's been too much insiders and doing favors for each other, and I was trying to fight that, but I just couldn't overcome it. Let us not remember for a second Slushy Gate, okay? This is where officers in LMPD off hours were driving around throwing slushies at just citizens on the street, okay? They're apparently just driving by and going and chucking slushies at people, all right? She wanted to go easy on them. She didn't want to fire them. She wanted to suspend them and let others off without any trouble. She wants to talk about deficiencies and upholding everything. She refused to fire people. I mean, this is like a Trump moment. It's like, who'd you fire that was causing these problems? You actually fought tooth and nail to keep a lot of these people who are causing these problems. Not turning on body cameras. That's been a big issue from her as well. How can you say you're fighting this when it appears you're part of it and you're actually promulgating it more by trying to go easy on other people? Something to look at. Something to remember. This resignation letter may be longer than what is normally submitted. The men and women of LMPD, both sworn and professional staff members, and the citizens of Louisville deserve to know I have not and will not abandon them. During my time here, I've met and talked with countless individuals who expressed newfound hope and optimism in the direction in which the department was heading. Many who shed tears of joy for brighter days ahead in the city they love. Therefore, I felt it necessary that I provide them an explanation. Although I'm aware that there is much work still to be done towards the culture at LMPD, I resigned my post as the head of this great department. I'm not resigned to the belief that the citizens do not deserve the best LMPD has to offer. I do not resign myself to believe that LMPD is capable of being a world-class department. I'm humbled to have been of service to those who shared the mission and look forward to any future opportunities to service the citizens of Louisville. In furtherance of my resignation, I agree to vacate headquarters, return equipment, and work remotely for 4 months until October 26, 2024. Upon separation on October 26, 2024, I agree to consult on disciplinary cases or litigation in which I was personally involved at an hourly rate of $125 per hour for preparation and or attendance at the meetings or proceedings at mutually agreeable times and places, plus travel expenses for the foreseeable future. Sincerely, Jacqueline Gwynn Vitrioli. Interesting that she has that little endpoint like, hey, yeah, I'll come back and help you guys out on cases and things that I botched for $125 an hour, though. That's what you need here. And she's also, it's funny, she's part of her resignation, she's vacating headquarters, returning equipment, and then working remotely for 4 months. So apparently she's just taking like a 4-month paid vacation, if I'm to understand that properly. And then after that, if you want her to show up to anything, it's going to be $125 an hour. And if I'm the mayor, I'd say, no. You don't need to work remotely. You're gone. You're just gone. Go away. Leave us, please. Clearly, she's like, this reads like a love-scorned lover who's clearly the toxic person in the relationship, just trying to gaslight everyone else into believing that somehow they're the problem, the other person's a problem, not them. Despite the fact that these moral deficiencies she mentioned, I can point to examples of exactly how she was morally deficient. Well, y'all, that's what we got time for today on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. We'll not be back here tomorrow. It's July 4th. But we will be back here on Friday with a new show. Hope you have a great rest of your day. As always, please make sure you leave a review. Make sure you tell others. If you want to reach out to the show, email info@theandrewshow.com. Have a great rest of your day.